Pamela, what is our special word for this episode? What is our special word for this episode?
Oh, a few to come to my mind. Truth, growth, facts,
Assumptions?
assumptions. That's a good
Yeah.
one. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, we've got a lot of very interesting stories for you today. And what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about when $5 leads are actually $200 leads. And don't worry, we're going to explain what we mean by that cryptic phrase in this episode. But rest assured, we are going to blow your mind. And also, we're going to give you some healthy habits so that these stories don't become one of your own personal stories that you tell your friends.
Yes. Yes. And I would say, whatever we say here, consider that it may not have to apply to you, but you're probably going to get some good pointers to ensure that whatever you're doing with ads becomes more accurate and that you have better numbers to work with and to make better business decisions with.
Fantastic. So, Pam, I'm going to let you take the lead on this episode and tell me exactly where do you want to start? How do you want to start this?
Okay, sure. So I think we'll preface it with the fact that when you do ads, you should always do tracking. And that means you should always have proper tracking installed, ideally with analytics or like with Google Tag Manager. However, it depends on how complex your marketing stack is, right? As a small business, probably analytics is enough. Google Tag Manager would be a benefit, but you don't have to do it. Now, the issue is oftentimes tracking can take a while to figure it out because it depends a lot on what kind of like website are you using, where are you hosting your website, what's the goals you're trying to track, right? Are you trying to track a sign up? Are you trying to track a purchase? Are you trying to track how much time somebody spends in your website? Like, what is it? And so the combination of these factors then determines what kind of tracking you're using. Now, to figure this out as a person who might not do marketing daily sounds very complex. I recently took a client through the connection of Zapier, Meta Ads, and then she used Constant Contact. And she was so grateful that we did that together, even though it took us maybe like 15 minutes. But she was so grateful that we did that together because there were so many steps along the way that she would have never been able to tell what to put in each one of these fields, what to select in each drop down menu. So she would have been stuck. So it would have taken her probably more than a day to figure this out, right? Um, but the problem is when you do not have correct tracking, you don't know how much you're getting out of your ads, right? So it could be that you're thinking, oh, I'm putting in like 5K every month and I'm getting out 5K, or I'm putting in 10K, or I'm getting out 2K. But it's likely that that number is not accurate, that that is wrong. And especially if that's the case for people who have been doing ads for a longer time and who have switched agencies or freelancers that they work with. Because typically what ends up happening is that each agency or freelancer stacks their own thing on top of what's there, but nobody cleans up what already exists. If any conversions are still being tracked, if there is any double tracking, if the code is like somehow broken or whatever, right? So at one point you're going to have to do that cleanup in order to understand, am I really tracking one conversion, or am I tracking actually like all the 5 conversions that the 5 people that I worked with so far set up each one of them, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what we're going to get into here.
Okay. So, what I'm hearing is a whole bunch of marketing nerd analytics speak. And I'm thinking as a business owner, yeah, but I know if my ads make money. Like, I mean, people are clicking on my ads. The phone rings. So, therefore, my ads are working. Why do you think that is not a good enough state of affairs? Because, I mean, most business owners would say, I'm getting orders, my phone is ringing. So, therefore, my ads are working. And that's how I know my ads are working.
Yes, it just makes a major difference whether you're paying $10 per phone call or $50 for a phone call, right?
Yeah.
Because if you, and I know there's a lot of things almost like, oh, I'm getting in phone calls. Yes, you're getting in phone calls, but the problem comes into play when people are like, oh, the phone call stopped. And you're like, okay, so how many phone calls did you get per week on average? And you're like, I don't know. They just kept coming in, right? So it's almost like when you don't brush your teeth and then go to the dentist and your teeth are like hurting, and the dentist's like, so how often have you been brushing your teeth? And you're like, then the dentist can't help you either, right? So he might just tell you, okay, maybe start brushing your teeth, right? So we're here to say, start tracking correctly, right? And we hopefully going to bridge this gap of like how you do that. But this is to show you it's something that your life is going to be so much easier when you do it once properly. And when you take a little bit of responsibility and accountability to do it on your own as a business owner. So I understand that you can easily hire people off of Fiverr, of Upwork, and so on to set this up for you at a very cheap cost. But trust me, the amount of troubles I've seen come from that, or the amount of like incomplete tracking that has resulted from that, has ended up costing people a multiple of what they spent before, right?
Yeah.
So make it a project of a half a day or half of 2 days, right? And say, you know what? First of all, I'm going to watch this episode till the end. I'm going to learn about this tracking. And then I'm going to open up these platforms and look into it myself and try to understand it.
Hey there, my friend. I know we've been talking a lot about conversion tracking, and I want to ask you a very simple question. Is your conversion tracking set up? I ask this question because when I sit down with so many entrepreneurs across the world and we talk about their Google ads, often the data that we're looking at in the Google ads account is not really reflective of what's happening in their business. Like, sometimes you go into Google ads and you see you have 100 leads and you know for sure your email inbox is empty. Yeah, that kind of thing. So here's the problem. In order for us to leverage the most powerful AI that Google has, we need to make sure that our conversions are tracked properly. And when they are tracked properly, you're going to waste less money on your ads, and you're actually going to find better and cheaper ways to get new leads, new sales, and more booked calls in your business. Now, I know you're absolutely brand new to this, and I know that you want a simple step-by-step guide to setting this up. So what I've done is I've put everything together in what I like to call my absolute beginner conversion tracking class. Now, in that class, I am going to give you a 90-minute replay. It's actually one of my most popular replays of me teaching my students how to do conversion tracking and how to do it step by step. So you don't have to be a computer person, and you definitely don't have to be a tech geek for you to figure this stuff out. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to give you, as a bonus, 7 days access to my private community so you can ask me anything after you've set up your conversion tracking properly. And as another added bonus, I'm also going to give you my lead cost calculator so you can know more or less what your leads should be costing you without ever spending a dime on ads. Now, all of this is included down in the link in the description below. Be sure to grab it because I'm not sure how long I'm going to leave these bonuses in there. I think you'll find it underneath courses and tools in the description. And trust me, this is going to help you immensely. And I wish I had something like this as a resource in my business when I was starting out, because man, I struggled with conversion tracking forever. So it's all down in the description and it's there for you. Now let's get back to the podcast.
Maybe even hiring a consultant for an hour once can help you immensely to do this on your own, right? So we've done this with like plenty of people where we literally took them by the hand in an hour. Sometimes you don't even need that, and be like, okay, here's what's not working. Here's what you need to do that. And then we go through it step by step on the screen, right? And that then can help them not just optimize their bidding, it can help them optimize what leads they're getting. Like, for example, we've had people that thought, oh, I'm getting so many conversions from like 18 to 24-year-olds, right? But when you actually talk about who walks into the door, it's older people, like maybe those like 55 and upwards, right? And that's not even like 18 to 24-year-olds that could be looking into like appointments for their grandma or whatever, right? Like that's a parent. That's just wrongly assigned data. And once that's cleaned up, then you can exclude, let's say, 18 to 24-year-olds, and you can focus your budget to be spent more towards that age group that really matters to you.
Exactly. Another thing that I like to say is we are not here to complicate your business. I think a lot of people confuse analytics and tracking with making things more complicated, but it's actually the reverse. We want to simplify your business. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. I never used to be able to budget as a business owner because I never knew how much money I was going to make. So some months, what I do is I'd have a lot of money in my bank account, and then guess what? Devon goes shopping and he overspends. I buy a whole bunch of things I don't need to buy, and then the next month I'm sitting there. I'm not getting any business in. I'm stressed out of my mind. And now I have to run sales. And now I have to reduce my prices. And now I have to take deals that I don't want to take, all because I didn't have a proper system or budget in place. But once I figured out how much my business earned over 12 months, divided that by 12, I then came up with the average amount of money that my business was earning. And now that I figured out, okay, fine, my business earns on average X amount every single month. Let's say $3,000 every single month. Now I know I can confidently go and I can spend maybe half of that money and I'll still be fine. I'll still be okay because I know that that's what my business generates on average. So when we're talking about this conversion tracking stuff and we're talking about analytics stuff, is we just want to make sure that you are actually getting more money from ads than you're actually spending money on your ads. That is it. We don't want to go and we don't want to say we're tracking all the human beings that are doing this. We don't want to do anything crazy. If you simplify conversion tracking down to its simplest form, we are just making sure that we're not giving Google more money than Google is giving us back. That is it. That is literally all that conversion tracking is.
Yeah, and it's if you feel like right now conversion tracking is a little bit too much of an effort for you, you might be like, "Oh, I'm not a tech person or whatever." The good thing is that there are so many step-by-step instructions out there on how to do that. It's just about finding the right piece of information for you that works for however you learn, however you process information, that you can then do it on your own. But you don't, typically, you don't need to know coding. I don't know how to code, right? Let me say this straight out there. I do not know how to code.
Me neither. Me neither.
All I know is how to copy paste a certain piece of code. And that's what you need to do here, right? So you do not need to code. You do not need to put in any like super technical stuff, right? And it all ideally doesn't take more than like 15 to 30 minutes to set up the first time, right? It might take you some hours the first time, right? Because you have to maybe you watch like a bunch of videos, stop them, look how it is in your account, and so on, right? But
Yeah.
it will save you so many hours and so much money down the road fixing these issues later, right?
That's so true. That is super true. And another thing I want to tell you guys is, look, if you're lost or you're stuck or you just want somebody to point you to the right resources, comment below. Let us know what you're struggling with, and we can either help you out or we can send you to somebody that is going to help you out. But do not sit there and tell yourself that you've kind of figured, sort of, kind of. I have my one student that I love so dearly from the Netherlands, and she's always kind of sort of figured it out, but she's always telling me, Devon, I don't think I've done it properly, but I think I've done it properly. And I'm like, well, which one is it? Did you do it properly? She's like, no, because I don't know how it looks when it's done right. So I said, exactly. Well, then you couldn't have done it properly. So it's always good to just reach out to somebody. Like, we've done this for years now, and we will tell you exactly, this is right, you're on the right track, or you need to completely redo your conversion tracking from the ground up. So don't feel like you're lost or stuck or isolated. You have us. Use us. Use that comment section below this video.
Yes, and be aware that you're not the only one, right? So for probably every question that you have, there are at least 15 other people who have the same question and who are going to be grateful that you asked that question, right?
Now, 9 years ago, I used to work at Google, and 8 years ago, I founded my own ad agency, Ajala Digital. And since then, we've helped over 3,000 advertisers all over the world grow with Google Ads. No matter where they're based on this globe, they have one challenge in common. They are usually tired of having to figure it all out on their own with ads and not getting the return that they are looking for. If you're currently tired of your ads, if you're tired of figuring it out on your own, and you need help with a real specialist and expert, then feel free to reach out. Check the link in the description below.
Yeah, definitely 100%. So when it comes to conversion tracking, where should we start there? Where should we start?
So if you are a simple small business that has one conversion that it tracks, let's say it's just phone calls, or let's say it's just like signups on a form on the website, right? Or any kind of leads you're getting, right? Then what you want to do is you want to go into Google Ads and use the conversion tracking there, right? Set up the conversion Google Ads. It's the simplest one to get started. At one point later, I probably want you to set up that conversion analytics. And the reason is if you set up the conversion analytics, you're also going to get the data from how many leads did you get organically, how many leads did you get from your email, from social, and so on, right? But to keep it simple, go into Google Ads and set up that conversion. And maybe I'm going to look up the link to the Google Ads Support Center that takes you through it step by step, right?
Lovely, lovely, absolutely lovely. Okay, so what are some of the things that people get wrong? What are some of the beginner mistakes that come along with setting it up for the first time, and how do we identify those?
So typically people end up setting up too many conversions because they're not sure if like the first one works. And so I'm there's literally this is one account that we work with, and they had set up subscriptions, signups, phone calls, again subscriptions, and add to carts, right? So you have this like 5 conversions where you're like, okay, but like what is actually the one that's of value to me right now, right?
Can I add something to that list? Please, guys, do not track page views on your blog articles and call them conversions that are tracked. Please do
Oh
not
yeah.
do it. Don't
Oh
do it.
yeah. And people are like, look at me, I'm getting conversions for $2 a click. For $2. And I'm like, yeah, but it's the same as your cost per click. Yeah, people are converting so well. No, it's literally people just clicking on your ad, right? And landing on your landing page. So yeah, never set up page views as a conversion. Google wants you to do that, but obviously that's not good, right? And then there are people, and I get this question fairly often, say, oh, but like, maybe I sell a higher priced product and I only have like 5 purchases a month, but those 5 purchases work really well for me when I do them because that's how my business runs, right? Shouldn't I use any other conversion so that I like warm up Google Ads, right?
Okay.
And that may make sense in the beginning where you can test, let's say people spend at least 5 minutes on your website, right? So
Okay.
you want to go with like time spend where people engaged with the site, or maybe scroll depth, right? It's a bit more complex to be set up. And you want to see how Google reacts to that conversion. We recorded an episode where we talk about why conversion tracking may not always actually be for the benefit of your business, right?
Yep.
So maybe we can link that below as well
Yeah,
in the show
definitely.
notes. And see if you're actually getting a good cost per conversion that makes sense, right? If you're starting to notice, hey, I'm paying like at least $200 for everybody who spends 5 minutes on the website, then that might not be helpful to you, right? And if you keep getting the sales in the back end, then conversion tracking may not be needed to you. Then all what you might want to do is actually add like UTM parameters to your ad. And for this, you can use the Google page URL builder tool. And you can literally type that in Google, or campaign URL builder. It's the first
Yep.
link that shows up, ga-tools.google. And use that link in your ads. And then you're going to get that data and analytics about what people did once they click on that link, right?
Lovely.
So,
Absolutely lovely.
most
Absolutely
welcome.
lovely. And I think also another thing that people ask me about often is, how much should I put my lead value at? Because I don't close every single lead that I get. So I'll give you what my answer to them is, and maybe you have a slightly different take, but I usually tell them that if it takes you 10 leads to close $1,000 deal, more or less, you should actually put the value of each and every single lead at $100. It doesn't mean that every single lead is worth $100, but it's always good to track a certain value in Google Ads. And it also helps a little bit with you assessing your ads, and it helps a little bit also with your conversion tracking if we know more or less the value of the leads that are coming in. Now, let's say one of your leads came and he bought $1,000 product, and then he bought a $3,000 or $35,000 product afterwards. Google Ads is not for you to manually log every single sale that you're doing. That's not what it's for. You've got invoicing software that does that for you. You've got accounting software that does it for you. But generally, what we're looking for is when consultants look at your ad account is we want to see how healthy it is. So yes, we know sometimes that you're getting leads for $150, but it doesn't help if you're getting a leads for $150, but you're only making $75 off of each sale. That means you're losing money on every single conversion. So we want to still value the leads. So Pam, what is your ethos? What is your methodology when it comes to putting a price on conversions?
I think a very boring answer right now. I agree with you on your methodology. So I got not much to add here. We'll keep it simple.
Lovely, lovely, absolutely lovely. Yeah. So when it comes to this whole world of conversion tracking, let's say I've gone through the setup, and so I feel like my ad is set up properly. I've hired a professional. They've told me my ad is set up properly. Is there any way that I can check that this is actually done properly?
So what we do with our local business clients is, especially in the beginning, we have them log, let's say, phone calls, right? And we have them ask their customers how they found them. Now, the problem with that is that when they say Google, you don't know if it was a Google ad, if it was Google Maps, if it was a Google review, right?
Yeah,
But you sort of get a feeling if the numbers line up, right?
yeah,
Like there have been instances where we had, like, let's say 10 conversions in a week, but the client said, oh, I didn't get any calls. Well, if that was the case, then you got to look into what's actually being tracked, right?
thank you.
And
Yeah,
in some instances, if you look at the conversion breakdown, right, and you can find this if you go in Google Ads to your campaigns, and then you have all these columns, right? And there's a button that says segment next to where you can adjust the columns. And if
yeah,
you click on segment and then conversions and then conversion action, you'll get a breakdown of which conversion was measured for each campaign. So you actually
lovely.
get an idea of, am I only tracking calls, or are there actually other conversions being tracked, right? And if you then see that there are other conversions being tracked that you don't want to be tracked, or that are old, then what you do is you go to the campaign settings, you go to where you have the conversion section. So that's called, let me see the exact name right as of right now, right? Because that
Yeah,
might always change. You go to the section conversion goals in your campaign settings. And typically, in most cases, it's set to account default. But you can change that and say, hey, I want it to be campaign specific. And then you can choose the campaign goals,
yeah.
right? So that way, you at least have a little bit of control which campaigns are being accounted for in which campaign.
Definitely. And I think a lot of business owners are also going to say, yeah, but can't I just trust Google to do all of this stuff? I mean, they say they have this magic Google tag that'll kind of track everything that needs to be tracked. Why can't I just install that and leave the smart Google people to do it for themselves?
So I start. First of all, Google doesn't even have enough people to care about you. That's the truth, right?
That's
You're a small business advertiser. Most likely, if you're watching this, if you work in a big corporation, then you probably have an account manager at Google, right? Whether that's good or bad, I think we can get into that in another episode. But you, it's your data, which means you're responsible for it. It's your business. You're the one in the end who needs to make the decisions. And you can only make the decisions for your business if you have the right data.
Yes.
So it's whether you like it or not, there are certain things you have to do when you run a business. And that might sometimes feel inconvenient. That might sometimes feel uncomfortable. Trust me, I've been there. But it's necessary because you can make so much better decisions after that when you have that clarity than when you just constantly rely on other people. Like the business owners that I see working with like freelancers, outsourcing for cheap and so on, and have no idea how to do it themselves, are the ones that constantly complain about things not working, about them having to constantly find like a new developer, a new freelancer, right? And you gotta be more involved. And if your agency or your freelancer doesn't give you certain data, or oh god, I was like, I have to mention this example because it was so crazy. A client of mine paid a person in Bangladesh, no, Pakistan, oh, Pakistan, $700 a month to create 10 ads, not even a campaign, 10 ads in one campaign on Facebook. And there wasn't
She's touching
even
her face. If you're watching on Spotify, switch on video so you can see how Pam is the
and
frustration.
yeah, so and he wasn't, and then she hired me for consulting, right? Because she felt like they could do something better. And I mean, it's not up to me to tell the client who to work with. And she came to me and she was like, "Hey, I'm not sure if this is really like, working out and like being a good deal that I'm getting here." And I'm like, let me show you in the next 10 minutes how you can literally duplicate these ads and create new ones on your own. And then you tell me if you still want to pay $700 for what you're getting right now. Right? I mean, obviously for the dude in Pakistan, it was a good deal, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's a great deal for him.
and for everybody listening, I've been to Pakistan. I have plenty of Pakistani friends, right? So I know the country. I can say I know the country. Um, but it's going to save you a lot of money, right? In the long run, it's going to save you a lot of time, a lot of hassle, a lot of nerves, and it's going to make you more confident. And I think just the fact alone that you are more confident in your decisions is going to have you have more fun with your business.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I've got a lot of friends that are business owners, and it's always surprising to me that when I ask them how much revenue they made last month, they can't answer me. When I ask them, have they made much more money this year than they have last year, they can't answer me. And that's because as entrepreneurs, we've often been taught this to shoot from the hip, to make it up as you go, to take risks, to not really worry about the money. But I think the scariest thing is you could be in the same place in your business year after year after year, and you could never know it because you're always busy and you're not looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
Last year, I did the exact amount of work. No, no, no. Last year, I did much less work than I did in 2023. I did much less work, but I made sure I was more consistent. And to my surprise, I made the exact amount of money that I did in 2023 by doing a lot less, but just being a lot more consistent. And the only reason why I knew I made as much money as I did in 2023 was I had my analytics, I had my stats, and I could see exactly what the business is doing. If you don't have conversion tracking, if you don't see what your ads are doing, and if you're relying on somebody who's not that reliable to actually show you what you're doing in your business when they maybe don't have control over their own business, it's kind of like asking somebody who doesn't have a driver's license to drive you to places. You're only going to end up in places you don't want to go. You're
Yeah.
only going to end up in places you don't want to go. So we can call this podcast episode a personal plea, to small business owners. I know you're busy. I know you need to make revenue. I know you need to make money. But can we please count the money that you make to make sure that you're actually making money? Is that okay?
Let's count the moolah.
Just count the moolah. That's all I'm saying. Like, get a money machine. Let's count it. Even if it's $10, let's do it through the money machine. And let's just make sure it's actually $10 that you made And you didn't just make $10, but you lost like $1,000 on ads. Can we just do that?
Yes, yes, yes. And to like give you a very concrete example that, you know, we kind of like themed this show after, this episode after, is we had this one client that came to us like, I kind of feel like my ads aren't really working, but my numbers tell me that the cost per conversion is $5. So like I should be happy. Like I should be good. And we get this quite frequently, right? It typically starts off with a feeling. So if you have a feeling where you're like, I'm not quite sure if this is really working, then listen to that. Don't discard that, right? Like look into it. And I'll give you a short example before I get into a real example. And this is not ads related, but I was like recently, so I've been posting a lot on LinkedIn, and I was like, this is so strange. I've always been asking people to comment, but somehow only like my connections commented, or like there's not a lot of comments, but there's likes
No
from other
engagement.
connections.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I looked into my comment setting. I was like, holy moly. The comments are off for anybody but my connections, right? So anybody who's not in my connection, and I have a lot of followers, not a lot of followers in comparison with other people, but I have, I don't know, like 5,000 or something. And I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. Of course, people can't comment because it turned off this function, right? So a lot of times it's a very hidden feature which you just don't see because you don't see the forest for the tree anymore because you've seen it so many times, right? So to get back to that example, the came to us with like $5. This is actually working well, right? And I was like, okay, so let's look at the conversions that you're tracking, right? And so he was tracking a bunch of like different conversions, right? Signups, and I think there was like even a page view conversion there. And all of them were set to like it's like equally important, and he was measuring all of them in all campaigns because he just added them. And when we looked into the campaigns that they were actually measuring, he was measuring all of the conversions at once. So a phone call was equal to a page view, was equal to like a sign up, was equal to, I think, a subscription, because subscription was different from sign up in this definition. And when we looked at what actually mattered, which was in the end a purchase for I think it was a subscription service, the cost per actual sign up was $200. But Google was showing him like $5, right? So you can imagine if you make decisions based on $5 versus $200, it's completely off, right? And in some instances, that's even going to mean that you're going to have to rethink how your business works. Because whether you acquire a customer for $5 or $200, that makes a huge difference. It might be a painful awakening, but you better make that decision now, because if you don't change anything now, you're going to run your business probably to the ground based on working with the wrong data.
That is insane. So he thought he was getting $5 conversions. Actually was getting $200 conversions for his subscription service.
Yeah.
Man. And for anybody watching this episode and shouting at your screen right now, but what about lifetime customer value? It doesn't work that way, because you kind of have to plan out lifetime customer value. You can't just turn every customer into a lifetime customer. And you kind of have to know that not every single customer is going to be doing business with you for the next 5 years as well.
Yeah, so that, and then consider if in this case, he got a lot more conversions that Google was optimizing for that weren't of any value to his business, right? So Google was optimizing for getting page views, for getting like signups and so on, because it was like, oh, that's where the cheapest cost per conversion is, instead of optimizing for the purchase, which was actually the one where the money was at.
Thank you very much. You actually reminded me about a story that I wanted to share about the same thing. So with my YouTube ads as well, I'm running these. I used to run these YouTube ad campaigns where I get people to sign up for my masterclass, and eventually they end up buying my course or whatever. So we used to track conversions, and we used to track conversions from people coming in South Africa versus the USA, because I like to advertise in my home country, but I also like to advertise in the USA. Now, long story short, the average South African is not going to buy my Google Ads course. It's too expensive, And South Africans are just not really there yet when it comes to digital marketing. Obviously, a few are, but it's not really a mainstream thing. So what happened was my conversions in America, I was getting them at about $7 or $8, right? My conversions in South Africa were way cheaper. I was getting conversions for like $1.86, right? So, and Pam can see where this is going. So, what Google started to do was it started favoring most of my budget and pushing my budget away from the USA, which is where most of my clients come from, and started pushing it towards the South African market or the South African location, because it was like, hey, we're getting these conversions for less than $2. This must be very good. And what happened was overnight, Google just started spending all of my money in South Africa, almost nothing in any country that could really afford my services. And I would have never picked that up. I would have never known about it if I didn't have conversion tracking enabled. I would just have looked at the numbers and go, oh, I'm really popular in South Africa, not knowing that actually South Africa is not where I wanted to be. So what I did eventually was I switched off the South African campaign. And now if I do want to run a South African campaign, I'll do it in a completely separate campaign, but I'll make sure most of my money gets spent in the USA.
Yeah, and for everybody who's like right now confused about but like then I have to do like a lot of different campaigns and I have to set up the campaign from scratch. You don't. There's an option to duplicate the campaign, right? So you do not have to set up everything from scratch, and then you just change the country and the budget, right?
Yeah.
So
And this is like a very extreme case scenario where you have a YouTuber who's known in South Africa and the USA. Most people are trying to get leads from their local surroundings, or maybe one or two or three countries. But I'm kind of a bit of an extreme case because I'm all over.
you're the boss.
I'm the boss. Yeah. So, Pamela, any closing thoughts when it comes to conversion tracking, or anything that you want to touch on before we bring this episode to a close?
So just in case you're now more confused than before, take the first step by telling us in the comments below what you're confused about. And if you're confused about the next step, where are you stuck? Let's get started there. You just have to take the next step. You don't have to think 10 steps ahead. You just take the next step, and then we'll take it from there.
Fantastic. I like that. And always remember something. If you're not tracking how much money you're making and you don't know how much money you're making, don't cry when you run out of money. That's my last thought to you as well. So, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Be sure to like and subscribe. And also, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Music, be sure to rate the show. It really helps out a lot. We're going to put a lot of useful resources down in the link in the description below. We're going to link to a couple more episodes also where we show you a couple of tricks with campaign setup and how you know that everything's dialed in. And we will see you on the next one. Peace.
See you.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. Be sure to like and subscribe. And I've got a whole playlist in case you've missed the previous 2 podcast episodes, and I'll put them over here. I will see you on the next one. Peace.